Marcus Anderson sat in the back row of his criminal justice class at State University, his fingers drumming nervously on the wooden desk. Professor Williams' lecture about wrongful convictions seemed to fade into background noise as Marcus checked his watch again, just 30 minutes until his final presentation. The classroom buzzed with the usual end-of-semester energy, but something felt different today. Through the glass panel of the classroom door, Marcus noticed two men in suits talking to the campus security guard. His heart rate picked up slightly, though he couldn't explain why. "Mr. Anderson," Professor Williams called out, "since you'll be graduating next week, would you share your thoughts on witness reliability?" The question snapped Marcus back to attention, and he straightened in his chair, ready to answer. Before he could speak, the classroom door opened. Detective James Thompson and his partner stepped in, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. The room fell silent as they walked directly toward Marcus's desk. "Marcus Anderson?" Detective Thompson's voice carried across the now silent room. "We need you to come with us." Marcus stood slowly, his mind racing through every possible reason for their presence. His classmates watched, wide-eyed, as he gathered his books, the research paper he'd spent 6 months working on. His ticket to law school slipped from his folder, scattering across the floor. As he bent to collect the papers, Professor Williams stepped forward. "Officers, Marcus is one of our top students. Whatever this is about, there must be some mistake." Detective Thompson's expression remained neutral. "Sir, we have security footage placing Mr. Anderson at First National Bank during yesterday's incident. He needs to come with us for questioning." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "Yesterday, I was in the library all afternoon working on my thesis. You can check the sign-in logs." His classmate Sarah stood up. "It's true. I saw him there around 4. But Detective Thompson already had the handcuffs out. "You'll have a chance to explain everything down at the station." As they led Marcus out, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the classroom window. His navy blue sweater, pressed khakis, and confused expression. The same outfit hundreds of young black men wore on campus every day. The same outfit the suspect probably wore. Professor Williams watched helplessly as his star student was escorted out, the half-finished lecture about wrongful convictions still displayed on the screen behind him. In a cruel twist of irony, Marcus was about to become more than just another case study in his textbook. The hallway seemed longer than usual as Marcus walked between the two detectives, his mind already racing through the alibis, witnesses, and evidence he'd need to prove his innocence. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would reshape not only his life, but the entire justice system in their state. Judge Robert Parker leaned forward in his chambers, studying the grainy security footage for the 10th time. The figure on the screen wore a navy sweater and moved with the same fluid grace as Marcus Anderson, but something about the timestamp bothered him. The prosecution had built a seemingly airtight case, a bank teller's positive identification, matching clothing description, and security footage from multiple angles all pointed to Marcus. Yet Parker couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his gut. Sarah Chen, Marcus's public defender, burst into his chambers with a stack of papers. "Your Honor, I have the library logs." Marcus signed in at 3:45 p.m. and didn't leave until closing. Parker frowned, checking the bank footage timestamp. 4:20 p.m., the perpetrator was clearly at the bank then. How could he be in two places? Exactly. Sarah spread the documents across his desk. And here's Marcus's student ID scan from the library entrance. The timestamps match perfectly. But District Attorney Michael Reynolds had an answer for everything. "Your Honor, the library system was down for maintenance that afternoon. Anyone could have signed the paper log using Anderson's name." Parker rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the decision before him. The evidence seemed solid, yet these small discrepancies kept surfacing. The bank's security camera showed 4:20 p.m., but the shadow angle suggested a different time entirely. Marcus sat in the courtroom, his mother gripping his hand tightly. His perfect academic record, character witnesses, and future law school acceptance meant nothing against the prosecution's circumstantial evidence. The system timestamps could be wrong, Reynolds pressed, but the witness identification is solid. The bank teller picked him out of a lineup without hesitation. What Reynolds didn't mention was that Marcus had been the only one in the lineup wearing a navy sweater, matching the teller's initial description. Parker noticed this detail in the lineup photos but chose to set aside his concern. The pressure to appear tough on crime weighed heavily on Parker's next decision. With elections approaching and crime rates rising, he couldn't afford to appear soft, even if reasonable doubt existed. As he prepared to deliver his ruling, Parker caught a glimpse of Marcus's mother's face, a mixture of faith and fear that would haunt him for years to come. He chose to ignore the timestamp discrepancies, the questionable lineup, and the library records. The gavel fell, and with it, the truth slipped further away. Neither Parker nor Marcus realized that this moment would set in motion events that would eventually expose a deeper conspiracy within the justice system itself. The manila envelope arrived at Judge Parker's office on a rainy Tuesday morning, 10 years after Marcus's conviction. Inside, he found a stack of photos, each marked with precise timestamps from the bank's original security system. Parker's hands trembled as he spread the photos across his mahogany desk. The timestamps showed 3:20 p.m., not 4:20 p.m. as presented in court. Someone had deliberately altered the timestamps before submitting them as evidence. Attached to the photos was a handwritten letter. "Your Honor, I can no longer carry this burden. The truth about Marcus Anderson needs to come out." The letter came from Thomas Wheeler, the bank's former head of security, now terminally ill. He detailed how pressure from higher-ups forced him to alter evidence, fearing a scandal would reveal their involvement in a larger financial scheme. Parker immediately pulled Marcus's case file, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he pored over every detail. The altered timestamps explained the shadow discrepancies he'd noticed but dismissed years ago. More disturbing revelations followed. The bank teller who identified Marcus had been dating the real perpetrator, a fact concealed during the trial. The maintenance records showing the library's system downtime had been fabricated. Each new piece of evidence hit Parker like a physical blow. He thought of Marcus, who would now be 38, spending his prime years behind bars while the real criminals walked free. The surveillance photos revealed another crucial detail. The real perpetrator's face reflected clearly in the bank's glass door. The man wore a similar navy sweater but was notably older than Marcus. Parker reached for his phone, then stopped. Going through official channels might alert those who orchestrated the cover-up. He needed to handle this carefully to ensure the truth wouldn't be buried again. As rain drummed against his office windows, Parker began writing detailed notes, documenting every new piece of evidence. His reputation, career, and conscience hung in the balance. But for the first time in 10 years, he felt something like hope. A second envelope arrived the next day, containing Wheeler's full confession and names of everyone involved in the cover-up. Parker realized this was more than just a wrongful conviction. It was a systemic failure that demanded more than just a quiet correction. Judge Robert Parker sat alone in his dimly lit study, surrounded by case files and evidence from Marcus's trial. The weight of his mistake pressed heavily on his shoulders as he reviewed Wheeler's confession for the 5th time. His wife, noticing his distress, brought him coffee. "Robert, you haven't slept properly in days. What's troubling you?" Parker couldn't bring himself to look at her. "I sent an innocent man to prison, Margaret. The evidence was manipulated, and I ignored the signs because I was more concerned about my reputation." He pulled out the original trial transcripts, comparing them with Wheeler's revelations. The systematic manipulation of evidence became clearer with each document he reviewed. The judge discovered that District Attorney Reynolds had received substantial campaign contributions from the bank's board members just weeks before Marcus's trial. The connection was too convenient to ignore. Parker's hands shook as he dialed Sarah Chen's number. When she answered, he could barely form the words. "I have evidence that will exonerate Marcus Anderson." Sarah's sharp intake of breath carried through the phone. After all these years, what changed? As Parker explained Wheeler's confession, his voice cracked. "I should have seen it sooner. The timestamps, the lineup irregularities, everything pointed to his innocence." His investigation revealed more disturbing patterns. Other cases involving the same bank had similar inconsistencies, suggesting a broader conspiracy to protect their financial interests. Margaret watched her husband work through sleepless nights, gathering evidence and building a case for Marcus's release. She'd never seen him so determined or so haunted. The system failed him, Parker told her one night. But worse than that, I failed him. I let my ambition cloud my judgment. As dawn broke outside his study window, Parker finished drafting his formal statement admitting his role in the wrongful conviction. His career would likely end, but Marcus's freedom mattered more than his reputation now. With trembling fingers, he picked up his phone to make one final call to the state attorney general's office. The truth couldn't wait another day. Judge Parker pulled out another crucial piece of evidence: emails between bank executives discussing their insurance fraud scheme. The very crime they pinned on Marcus was part of their cover-up. His computer screen flickered as he opened archived security footage from multiple bank branches. A pattern emerged showing the same real perpetrator, now identified as James Mitchell, hitting 4 locations over 2 months. The lineup was rigged, Parker muttered, examining photos that proved Mitchell's girlfriend, the bank teller, had been coached on identifying Marcus. Her statement contradicted itself 3 times. Parker discovered Mitchell's connection to the bank's vice president through financial records. Regular payments had been made to an offshore account, starting just days after Marcus's conviction. Late that night, a knock at his chamber door startled him. Sarah Chen entered, carrying more files. "Judge, I found something else. The bank's internal audit from that year, it disappeared right after Marcus's trial." Together, they pieced together how the bank had orchestrated both the crime and the cover-up. Each revelation made Parker's guilt heavier. A security tape from the university library, thought destroyed, surfaced in the evidence locker. It clearly showed Marcus studying during the bank robbery, but had been deliberately misfiled. Margaret brought dinner to his office, finding him surrounded by mountains of evidence. "Robert, what will you do?" "Everything," he replied, his voice firm. "Whatever it costs me, whatever it takes. Marcus deserves his freedom, and everyone involved needs to face justice." Dawn approached as Parker finished documenting every piece of evidence. His detailed report exposed not just Marcus's wrongful conviction, but an entire network of corruption reaching into the highest levels of the banking system. He knew the next steps would destroy his career, but for the first time in years, he felt at peace with his decision. The truth couldn't stay buried any longer. Marcus Anderson stepped out of the prison gates on a crisp autumn morning, his mother's arms wrapping around him before he could take his first breath of freedom. The world looked different after 12 years. Smartphones replaced payphones, and his childhood neighborhood had transformed. His first stop was his mother's house, where she kept his room exactly as he'd left it. The criminal justice textbooks still sat on his desk, a painful reminder of his interrupted dreams. Sarah Chen, his former lawyer, helped him navigate the challenges of reintegration. Job applications, housing forms, and updated identification documents filled his days. Each "check if you've been convicted" box felt like a fresh wound. At night, Marcus would sit on his mother's porch, watching people hurry past. Some neighbors welcomed him back warmly, while others crossed the street when they saw him coming. His first job interview ended quickly when the manager recognized him from news coverage. The second went better, a small bookstore owner who believed in second chances. Marcus struggled with technology. His mother patiently taught him about touchscreens and social media. He discovered old classmates had become lawyers, judges, and teachers, lives he might have had. The compensation from the state felt hollow. Money couldn't replace 12 years of lost opportunities, missed family moments, and derailed dreams. Yet Marcus found purpose in sharing his story. Local law schools invited him to speak about wrongful convictions. Students listened intently as he described how justice system failures changed his life. His mother noticed small changes. He always sat facing doors, never turned his back to windows, checked exits in every room. Prison habits died hard, but hope grew stronger each day. Marcus enrolled in night classes, determined to finish his degree. His experiences had given him a unique perspective on the justice system, one he planned to use to prevent others from suffering the same fate. Marcus's evenings became therapy sessions with the neighborhood children, who gathered on his porch to hear stories and advice. Despite his past, parents trusted him. They saw his gentle spirit and determination to make his community better. He joined a support group for ex-honorees, finding solace among others who understood the unique challenges of rebuilding a life after wrongful imprisonment. Their shared experiences helped him process his anger and fear. Local businesses gradually opened their doors. A coffee shop hired him as their morning manager, appreciating his punctuality and calm demeanor, habits formed during his incarceration. His mother watched proudly as Marcus learned to drive again, mastered modern technology, and slowly rebuilt his confidence. Each small victory, using a self-checkout machine, opening a bank account, navigating social media, marked progress. The hardest moments came unexpectedly. A slammed door would trigger prison memories. Crowded spaces made him anxious. But Marcus developed coping strategies, turning these triggers into teaching moments for others. His criminal justice studies resumed, now enriched by first-hand experience. Professors valued his unique perspective, and students sought his mentorship. The system that once silenced him now amplified his voice. Dating proved challenging. Explaining his past meant reliving it, and many couldn't handle the complexity of his story. But Marcus remained patient, knowing authenticity mattered more than approval. Through it all, his resilience shone. Marcus transformed his pain into purpose, using his experience to advocate for justice system reforms while helping others rebuild their lives after incarceration. Marcus launched the Justice Renewal Center on a sunny spring morning, transforming a former warehouse into a beacon of hope. Judge Parker, now retired, stood proudly beside him as they cut the ribbon. The center quickly became a hub for legal advocacy, offering free services to potentially wrongfully convicted individuals. Marcus's experience shaped every aspect, from the welcoming atmosphere to the comprehensive support services. Parker contributed his legal expertise, training young lawyers to spot the subtle signs of wrongful convictions he once overlooked. Their unlikely partnership drew national attention, inspiring similar initiatives across the state. They developed a groundbreaking program called Second Look, reviewing cases with similar patterns to Marcus's. Their work exposed systemic flaws and led to several exonerations within the first year. Marcus expanded the center's services to include reintegration support, job training, and counseling. He remembered his own struggles and ensured others wouldn't face them alone. Local law enforcement agencies began sending officers for training, learning from Marcus's story to prevent future wrongful convictions. Even skeptical veterans found their perspectives shifting after hearing his experiences. The center's success attracted support from influential allies. Politicians sought their input on reform legislation, and law schools incorporated their case studies into curricula. Marcus and Parker's collaboration proved that redemption and reconciliation were possible. Their story became a powerful testament to the importance of acknowledging mistakes and working tirelessly to correct them. As the center celebrated its first anniversary, Marcus looked at the wall of success stories, photos of reunited families, newly freed individuals starting fresh, and communities healing together. His own journey had become a bridge between past injustice and future change. The Justice Renewal Center stood as living proof that even the darkest experiences could light the way forward, showing how truth and perseverance could transform lives and systems alike.